And welcome back. As we mentioned prior to the commercial break, we are moving into a two-part conversation this morning. We have been joined on set by the president of the Belize National Teachers Union, and that is Senator Elena Smith, and of course the vice president. He's no stranger to all things union. Good morning. Good morning, my good friend Luke. Palacio.
Good morning, Zadi. Good morning,
This is a broad conversation we're about to embark upon in terms of the state of affairs regarding teachers and unionism, and of course the relationship between the BNTU and of course the government of Belize. Now, I understand that there was a meeting held on December 9th with the Ministry of Education, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm getting the vibe that you sort of walked into that meeting blindly in terms of what was on the table and what was to have been the outcome of that discussion. What was the meeting about, and what were the points being discussed?
Okay, so blindly in terms of we weren't aware of what the wording would have been and how many amendments would have been placed before us.
Yeah.
We knew ahead of time that they would have been doing some amendments, and so we were told that one would have been on the vacation period and one would have been on the contracts. So those we were aware of. We were told 4, and then when we got there, we got the document and it said 3. So again, in terms of the wording, we weren't sure what it is that they were going to be changing, what they wanted to amend, but we knew that what were going to be the areas to be amended. And so that meeting on the Monday was to present to us the proposed amendments to the rules.
Yeah. So let's just dive right in and find out what is being proposed.
Okay, so as I said, we focused on 3 amendments. The first dealt with emergency vacancies, the second dealt with the vacation period, and then the third dealt with the contracts. And so, Brother Luke will discuss with you the vacancies, emergency vacancies.
Okay, good morning again, and thank you for having us this morning. When we look at the amendments, first we need to point out to the nation that whenever the Ministry of Education, and in particular and the government of Belize in general, invites you to a consultation, obviously it is not a consultation. It's just to inform you that these are the things that we have decided, and so we are informing you. And the other issue we've had with the ministry over these years, these past few years, is that the ministry has an issue with the way the BNTU organizes and operates in terms of ensuring that if we are to reach agreement on any issue, there will be times, most times in fact, that we have to consult with our membership, because they are the ones who give us our mandate and how we operate. And the ministry's criticism has always been that BNTU goes through a long, drawn-out process before they agree on anything. And I can understand their frustration, because it would seem that basically they wake up one morning and decide, look, this is not working, or we want to change this, we're going to change it, and nobody should stand in the way. In relation to the emergency vacancies, the education rules are clear on how vacancies are filled. They are saying that in the case of emergency vacancies, one of the things they want to do is to waiver the recruitment and selection process, which basically means that when somebody applies to become a teacher, there are certain things that he or she must have. You know, the one, of course, a valid license, which means it could be a special license, a provisional license, or a full license. You must have the necessary qualification at the level that you are applying to teach in. And the other things, of course, your police record and all of these things. So they are saying in this matter of this emergency vacancy, they are prepared to waiver those things. Our concern when it comes to that is, are we opening a door there now for cronyism, nepotism, and for paternalism, for people to be given something as a reward? Because if we are looking at just basically you having a license, we are not going to do any interview, because all of those make up a part of the selection process, then we are concerned. Because if at the end of the day, and these emergency vacancies somebody can be employed under that particular amendment for up to 3 months. If we were to end up with someone who does not have those requisite qualifications as such. And the students in that particular, or under the tutelage of that particular teacher, performs miserably. You will hear that the teacher not perform, that the teacher for blame. And so we are a bit concerned about that.
Yeah.
The idea behind the amendment is good.
Well, that's the question I have. Looking at this issue, I want to hear from you. Have there been examples in any part of the country where they've been unable to fill a position in an emergency? Why this is necessary?
Well, I don't know that, I can't come to a specific example.
Yeah.
But what has happened is that, yes, a teacher may have to proceed on sick leave.
Yeah.
A teacher may have, might resign in the middle of a school year or a school term. A teacher may go on interdiction if he commits a crime,
Yeah.
a major offense. So in those instances, yes, that can occur.
Yeah. But is there a challenge in filling the position? That's my question.
I don't think that there is a challenge necessarily. What this is trying to do is to say that in the shortest possible time, they would want somebody to replace the teacher so affected.
But you're not just saying somebody, you're saying not necessarily a licensed teacher. That's what the new amendment,
No, it
the
has
new...
to, I think one would have to be the licensed teacher. The other things, the recruitment and selection process, where you go through an interview and then you have to submit to the Teaching Service Commission, that whole process. They're saying that they are prepared to waiver that.
Which your concern is that it opens a certain gate or a door.
It can be an appointed...
Yeah, you know.
Select who you want. And we were looking at the case right now of the principal at Julian Cho. And we're having that issue. Would that then fall under this? And so is it possible that the person who they would want to have that position can then be given that position via this clause?
Yeah.
So, and then one of the other issues too, Marlene, is that when we have these teachers who are hired on these short-term basis, we have had issues with them not being able to get their salaries. So they might complete the entire 3-month period and still waiting for salary because of the process, or they are hired because it's an emergency, and then the commission might say, well, you know what, the documents were received late, and so your payment will be given to you just based on the time that we received the documents, and so not necessarily the time when you began teaching. Wow. So a few issues, that we do have in terms of those short-term vacancies, the emergency vacancies.
Have these gone into effect? Or are you still at the stage where you're sort of lobbying to have inclusions or retractions per se from the amended?
That's the question, because we were promised the final document. The minister told us at the meeting that he had with us that after the ministry had completed the drafting, that we would have seen that document before him signing it. We're still waiting, so we are unsure whether that was, well, we know it was prepared, because when I spoke to the EG, he said that they had prepared a few of them, and so we know that they were prepared. Whether the minister has signed them or not, we are not aware. We made checks. I made checks at the National Assembly where they normally keep these things, and they don't have any copies of them. They're not aware of it. So we are not sure whether he had signed these into law or not.
So your primary concern is that circumventing the vetting process can open the door to people being put in a position that maybe someone else would have been better suited for, or they would not have been suited for had they gone through the vetting process. Yep. So in an emergency, it's an emergency. Nobody really can know what's going to happen. And clearly children need a proper teacher in their classroom.
Correct.
So I guess my question is, or what comes to mind is there a delay that takes place? You're talking of the Julian Cho case. That's a very good example of where it's been quite some time that they've been able to fill that position. Is there another area that is falling short or working too slow or overburdened that is slowing down the process that should be fixed instead of going this route?
Well, I think that there are a number of teachers who have been employed on a temporary basis. If those persons would still be available, because then they would have gone through that selection and process, then I think they could call in those persons to come and fill in the vacancies. They would already have had some experience being in the classroom, sometimes replacing somebody who would have been on long leave, somebody who is on maternity leave. So I believe that there are persons out there. What this is saying though, that this makes it open for any management to employ or fill these vacancies if the conditions are met. But the conditions they have listed at the bottom here tells you that they are going to waiver the recruitment and selection process. And our other concern or suspicion came about where we are able to sort of zero in on the Julian Cho case. At the bottom of this amendment, or at the end, it says, additionally, it must provide for a period of holding over where a principal is terminated abruptly. Why do we need to single that out?
Yeah.
You know, is it going to be now the norm that a management or somebody says, well, this principal needs to go, and therefore will now decide who's next? Because the rules as it relates to the principal also makes provisions for somebody to succeed a principal. It does not necessarily mean, or the rule clearly states that it's not that if you are a vice principal that you automatically become a principal, but if somebody is terminated abruptly, the natural thing or normal thing to do would have been to ask the vice principal
to hold over
until such time.
Why is this so? What brings us to this particular clause or where we are at the moment? Has there been a situation or a number of situations that have precipitated this sudden change or this particular move?
We believe, yes, that it has been that there are persons. You see, the Ministry of Education has made this effort, and a number of individuals have on their own made sure that they got the necessary qualifications to become a teacher, meaning going to school, getting your associate degree in primary ed, getting your bachelor's degree in whatever educational field, and then you're still out there without a job.
Yeah.
But the teaching profession can only accommodate so many persons at a given time. So if an opportunity were to come up for you to decide I'm going to give X, Y, or Z a break, then this could be the avenue that can be used.
How long does it take to go through the vetting process?
It basically, again, a part of it has to do with managements who are basically the persons who recommend. And if they carry out the recruitment and selection process, and then they wait a certain time to submit that information to the Teaching Service Commission, then that causes a delay. There have been instances that I know of as well that persons are employed even without the approval of the Teaching Service Commission, and then that poses another problem. So at times when we put rules in place and we don't follow the rules, then we end up with these types of problems. Because if a management is told you need, and in most instances, if somebody is to proceed on long leave, the rules are clear how early you must apply. So there is no reason why.
So there's time to plan ahead.
Right.
Yes, so there should be no reason.
If it's maternity, there's time to plan ahead.
Exactly.
But of course, in an emergency, sickness, or whatever else may have taken place, you will need to fill that spot. But from an outsider, hearing these particular these suggested changes, it sounds like there is difficulty getting teachers into the classrooms immediately. And because of that sense of urgency, this is a way to get a qualified teacher into the classroom as fast as possible. Unvetted, but qualified.
And it's not necessarily not being able to find a teacher. It's the process, the advertising, the interviews, the selection process, the approval. That is what keeps back the person from being in the classroom. So
doesn't this undermine doesn't waiving the process altogether undermine the system of vetting persons to put in the classroom? And I know it's something that you guys have labored for all this time, and then now comes this that says, okay, you know what, in an emergency situation we can do away with this and just proceed with our own discretion to install someone in the classroom.
Well, it comes back to what I said earlier. Somebody woke up one morning and decided this is what we want to do. We want to change this.
Yeah.
Because in our view, there are many teachers out there, persons who have been employed for 4 or 5 years temporarily. 3 months this time, another 3 months the
Moving
other time,
around.
and moving them around. So those persons are out there.
That's what you call it like on an itinerant basis? Or is that
More
different?
substitute.
No, it's different. It's just
Okay.
basically filling in those vacancies
Yeah.
that would arise when somebody goes on one of these long leave, sick leave, maternity
Yeah.
leave, study leave.
Yeah.
So persons are out there.
Yeah.
And what we need to understand here as well is that if somebody is employed temporarily during a particular school year, then those years are not counted as years for service. So there comes in another dimension.
Yeah,
And so if you have persons out there who have given you service, who are prepared to continue to give service, they don't have any sort of employment, then why not
Yeah.
make that one of the clauses that would then give some kind of assurance that one, the person in the classroom or who is replacing whoever, because that would have caused this vacancy to arise,
Yeah.
is qualified, has some degree of experience,
Yeah.
and therefore the thing should run smoothly.
Is there any distinction made between when the vetting process will be circumvented and when it won't? In other words, for every future vacancy that comes up, will it just be that we don't go through the vetting process?
For the emergency, just for the emergency
Just for
vacancies.
emergency.
If that emergency or whatever had given rise to that emergency persists after 3 months, then you have to go through the selection process, the recruitment and selection process.
One other thing, Marina, I think that we need to mention as well, Lucas said it earlier, the thought behind having these teachers being replaced quickly is a good one. Because we find that sometimes teachers go off, and then what happens is that the remaining teacher, for example, a primary school, you might have 3 of one level. The remaining teachers have to share up that class.
Yeah.
And so the
amalgamate
children, right, so the
classes.
children lose. Or sometimes we have where the vice principal has to come in and take over the class for the month, the 2 months, depending,
Yeah.
because you can't get a replacement teacher. So in those instances, it does help, because the students need to have a teacher there, to
Yes.
keep that continuity. But the concern, as was mentioned, is what can be done or how this can be twisted to suit situations. That is the concern.
So what is your suggestion? What have you suggested in terms of, since you've seen this suggested amendment, how can it be improved?
Well, we were not given an opportunity to make those suggestions. As a matter of fact, that meeting we had on the 9th of December was, again, we raised our concern. You brought us here to discuss these things, yet you're only giving us 1 hour. So there wasn't much room for discussion and for suggestions, and that is why we were told, well, go ahead, discuss them with your council. We will bring them back to you before they are signed, and if you have suggestions, we may look at it, but the minister made it absolutely clear that he does not have to bring this back to us before it is signed. So that is why I'm saying that consultation now means you've been informed, and it ends there.
It was just a courtesy that he invited us to a meeting and he shared with us the suggested amendments.
So I get the only place I'm still confused, and forgive me for belaboring the point, because what I hear from you, Luke, based on what you explained, is that there are people who are dropping the ball and filling emergency positions, and it's not necessarily the teachers and it's not necessarily the ministry. It sounds like the management drags the feet in terms of putting forward their position, and there is an existing process on how to fill emergency vacancies. So is there a way, or should there have been a way of reinforcing the process that already exists that allows for proper vet? If it's a preschool and my child is there, I want to know that that person has been properly vetted. I'll be honest with you. If it's standard 6 and we're heading into PSC in March, I want to know that teacher is properly vetted, as if I'm a parent. So the vetting process has its purpose, but is it something that perhaps we need to go back and look at the process and see how we can strengthen that and hold people accountable, rather than going through this, okay, well, we'll skip the vetting, 3 months later we'll do it?
Well, that is why we are saying that while we understand the intention behind the amendments, we're saying because you have not provided sufficient details, or we've not discussed it to any great extent, that we are saying, look, if you as a management and the ministry, and particularly our Teaching Service Commission, would have had a bank of persons who have been employed temporarily.
Okay.
You can go to that bank and say, look, a vacancy exists at St. Joseph, for instance.
Yeah.
Mr. Cayetano was teaching there for 3 months. He's still out there without a job. Can we bring in back Mr. Cayetano to fill this vacancy if he agrees?
Because he's already been through a vetting process.
Exactly.
Okay. I hear what you're saying. So you'd prefer to have almost a bank of teachers that can be trusted, because that's what the vetting process is. Teachers that can be entrusted with children to go back into the classroom, rather than leaving it up in the air that any teacher can go in that spot.
No.
So you put forward that recommendation already, or
like I said,
you've just had that?
We have not been given the opportunity to. But we are pointing it out now that because this amendment does not spell out that particular bit, then they can always say, yeah, we could use this as one of our conditions for persons to be employed.
We've written to them and said to them that, we have concerns in these areas. So we have done that. So they know that we are concerned, these are our concerns, and we are waiting to see what would be the response.
And in all fairness, your experience as unionists know that any loophole later on can become an area where they say, well, it's in the education rules. And in fact, that's one of the amendments that's being made as well, looking at vacations at the end of the year. And what we're going to do is take a very quick break, and when we come back, we'll tackle that one. So please stay tuned as we continue our conversation with the Belize National Teachers Union. We'll be back in a few. Stay tuned.